Hi, I'm indie fantasy author Melinda Kucsera, and we're back with another episode of Fantasy Lore and More. And today we've got Chris Mayne, and he's joining me to talk about his book, Heretic. And I've already got questions. Who is this Heretic, and what did they do? Welcome, Chris. Why don't you tell us about Heretic?
Yeah. So look, yeah, the Heretic in this novel is a character by the name of Arlex, and Arlex kicks off not having a good day at all, to be honest. And this comes no surprise, but literally the first thing that happens is he awakes in the middle of a crater that's leveled a huge part of the palace district, but hasn't got a scratch on him. So in fact, it's only when he gets taken to the infirmary that he starts to understand even just a little bit about what's going on, and that he from there becomes the most wanted citizen in the land. So yeah.
Oh boy, that's wow.
Yeah, it kicks off bit confusing for him, but what starts happening from there is we start to become introduced to a number of different characters, and the setting begins to reveal itself there about this sort of post-apocalyptic, far-flung future that is quite, I call it an ancient future because it's after a real cleansing of the earth, a war in heaven and hell that has left the earth pretty much decimated, but some life survived and started to rebuild these cities, these pockets of civilization around the planet. And so that's where we find ourselves, in New Tartarus. And in New Tartarus, there's a bit going on. It's not the best, and this overlord is running the place, and making life pretty difficult for some of the people like Arlex.
So I'm guessing he has some kind of magic if he woke up in a crater. Yeah. Either that or he crash landed.
Yeah. So no, yeah, really good question. So it's not a crash landing. So he's working. He's an underminer. So
right.
These cities are built on top of the cities of our time, and they're these ancient, like New Tartarus is like this ancient Gothic city, that ancient looking, I should say, but beneath it is cities of our time, and these miners are digging up the past pretty much as just resources, really. And his explosion starts from underground, where he's working as a miner, pretty much indentured there, and feels this incredible light and sensation around him, almost literally earth shaking, that just destroys everything around him. So then the journey becomes one of discovering the power, meeting these incredible. I love the characters. I mean, that start to become part of his group, his crew. The adventurers that some are really, altruistic, trying to help him along. Others are seeing the benefit for themselves with this power that's evident. But at the same time, trying to clear his name. He's the most wanted terrorist in the land, and more so, he's also this power that he's uncovered. There's much more to it that's got these dark interests.
Oh no! Did we lose you? Did your characters decide you're giving away too much? Uh-oh.
You can still hear me?
Oh, you're back.
Well, that's funny because I was just explaining something from in the middle of the book that's quite.
I think the characters undermined you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a massive spoiler. But anyway, yeah. Well,
And
I
we
might
missed
mention it
it.
now. Yeah, and the murderer was. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of the setting. It's like, the planet was, if we zoom right out, what we know about the time, that time period way in our future, the apocalypse, Armageddon, the whole back of the Bible, it's already happened. The war in heaven and hell, gods have moved on. It was meant to be done and dusted, but it's almost like that. It's almost like the epilogue of Earth. There was some unfinished business. There was ends loosed, some things left untied, and so it's the last tale. It's humanity's last tale. Yeah.
Oh wow. So is there something before Heretic where you explore that? Because like how do they still how are they still there after Revelations and the biblical ending of the how is anybody still around? Because I
Yeah.
always pictured that to be like the spiritual atomic bomb
Yeah.
equivalent. It takes everything out.
Yeah.
But it sounds
So
like that didn't happen.
there is histories about what happened, and there is stories and tales and about how civilization almost had to. I mean, so much time. We're talking about incredible amount of time, eons in the future, where we've almost had to rise again from the dust. Without recreating some of the technologies again. And in this, what's funny in this future. Ancient future, because there's no gods, there's no sane gods, I should say, because there is some opportunistic demons that have realized the jewel of Earth remains unguarded, unprotected. And so these cracks have formed, and these cracks have allowed dark beings, demons, to infiltrate, and they've also allowed for this sort of twisting of physics, because that's ultimately what's allowed for some elements of magic to start to creep into the world as well, because without that control of the of gods, there was magic can come back in, but demons can also realize that Earth lies unprotected, and we find that these overlords that have come through have actually got origins in the underworld. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So it's a nasty place. So we start to understand why. Why
Yeah.
is the world like this? What's happened? Who's benefiting from the servitude of humanity's last remnants? What's the end game here? What's the benefit to this? There is some immortal power in here who's realized that Earth is unprotected. Its people are still around. There's new generations, and some cities have regrown. It's techno-organic technologies have come through, and the growing of magic. So yeah, all of those. But then that's the big picture. Meanwhile, poor Arlex, right? He wakes up in St. Marl's Cathedral, strapped to a bed, and he's got this acolyte looking over him, Victor, who's trying to secretly figure out what's going on, because he's obsessed with magic, and he doesn't really want his superiors to know what he's observed in this patient, this survivor from the incident, because so far he's the only one. He's the only survivor. Well, he really is. There's no reason to say so far he's the only survivor. Yeah, and without a scratch on him, as we said.
That's wild. All right, so let's meet Arlex, and because now I'm curious. So let's dive into that excerpt, and then we'll come back and continue talking about this.
Yeah, so I think this will cover kind of. I'm just going to do this is just the opening, which is how it starts off, and first couple of pages just about how he's what he's gone through. So And then we can jump into another bit later if we have time, but we'll probably run out of time. So Arlex's eyes were burning. At first, it had only been an itch that had started that morning. He rubbed at them as he left his underground dorm on his usual journey through the narrow, dimly lit tunnels, but that only seemed to make them worse. Arlex squinted as he passed the canteen, seeing it as if through a foggy haze, and avoiding going all the way inside, instead reaching in between two distracted miners in the queue and snatching a cup of thick caf and half a piece of cold toast. He dodged back out through the assembling breakfast crowd and made his way to his assigned dig station. As he walked and ate, he rubbed his eyelids with the back of his hand, doubting how he would make it through the day if this went on. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the stinging feeling stopped. He blinked a few times to be sure. Not a trace of it. Great. Now back to my wonderfully craptastic life. Things could be worse, he figured, and had gone about his usual uneventful shift, thinking not much of it. Now his eyes were on fire. The taste of metal filled his mouth, and his hands tingled and trembled. He dropped his pick. All he could see was bright burning light. Nothing was ever bright down here. His head pounded, and he could hear voices calling out, but he couldn't make out what they were saying. They sounded muffled and far away. He lost all sense of balance and position. The ground rose to meet him, its cold stone hitting his cheek. He struggled up, and an incredible force threw him back down again. A high-pitched whine pierced his ears. He floated off the floor. His eyes and mouth stretched open, his back arched, and all four limbs shot out as a dazzling whiteness engulfed him. Then he fell back to the ground, all stopped, suddenly silent. Arlex lay on his back. His eyes still ached, but he could open them. He could see. And although he was in agony, he laughed. Isn't that where the ceiling should be? Above him, what was previously occupied by half a mile of solid earth between him and the surface, was now nothing but grey sky. High above, tendrils of dark smoke snaked across his view. He tried to get up, fell back to the ground, and everything went black. So that's kind of, we kick off straight into that explosion there. And what we'll find later, though, is there's a couple of clues in there. When he is feeling those feelings of the whiteness and the floating and the shifting, not many scenes later, there's a couple of characters that experience exactly, without the explosion, they experience the same thing. And there's this link. And so then that we start to see a thread form. Because it's not, that explosion is actually a sign. It's a cause of he has actually gone off because of another thing that has happened. So I'll leave it there because otherwise we'll cut out again. But
you sense the characters coming closer.
It's actually a condition of something that has occurred that has created. It's a conditional response to something. So we learn about that. We'll learn about, okay, so why? What is it that's made that? And then we start to see later on in the book that there is something more. That it wasn't just that explosion. Arlex now has, from that point on, some sort of powers about him. And Victor observes it, the acolyte who's tending to him in St. Malus Cathedral. The acolytes are healers, so but they only know a few very rudimentary spells. So they can do a basic healing spell. They can do a diagnostic where they see what someone's what someone's condition is, and they can create light. And that's about it. That's the magic of the world. It's pretty limited, and it takes a lot of effort from those that are magic sensitives. And now all of a sudden, Victor's notices in his one day of when he starts to investigate Arlen, he notices more magic in that diagnosis than he's seen in his whole life. So Victor starts to get pretty keen on on knowing more about Arlex, and he gets a bit possessive of him and protective as well. So he ends up being able to help him try to get out of there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So it is magic like so what is how do they view sort of the magic that sort of it sounds like it's coming back.
Yeah. So
Is it
magic.
viewed as like a positive thing, a negative thing, things something we
Yeah.
need to control, something we need to stop or
Great
limit?
question. Yeah. So
I ask because like magic is illegal or like not
yeah.
allowed is like it's a big trope in fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I play with it too, so
Yeah. No, look, in this world, if you show, so it's very highly regarded and respected. So if there is magical affinity shown at a young age, you pretty much are forced into the order. And if you are serving in the order, then
Mhm.
you become an acolyte. You're like a cleric. You're a healer, and you serve under the order. And basically, it's more of the it's known that that's really all the three things that the acolytes can do is as a basic sort of caring spells. So anything outside of that is drastically new to the
Mhm.
world. So it's seen with awe more than anything. But the way that it's come about in Arlex produces a very big response from the Overlord and his Nephilim horde who want to get after him for a number of reasons. So yeah, but then I the biggest thing I love is the characters that Arlex gets to come across. So
And who are
Arlex
they?
is Arlex Victor, who's
Mhm.
questionable character, but yet we wouldn't ever want him away from Arlex because he's very protective. But
Mhm.
we will question his motives along the way. And Victor's hobbled. Like Victor, he's a bit of a contradiction because although he's a healer, his knee is necrotic. So it's basically in his language, it's dead. So he can heal stuff, but he can't heal something that's dead. So he has to use a
Oh.
cane and can't walk properly. So although he's a healer, can't heal himself. So his body is limited. And that there's that sort of interplay too between the physical world versus the magical for him. And he's weakened, but in magic he sees power. And but then where they come across is a couple of escapees from Downshade Asylum who really make things interesting once they get into it. They're also, I'll touch on them in a sec because one of the big power players is a female character called China Dawn. China Dawn is probably the most famous bounty hunter assassin in the land. A really infamous, I should say, figure. One that Arlex has often, he's kind of like her, his hero in a sense. And China Dawn's on his tail, so she's after him after the contract. But when the Downshade Asylum guys, the fugitives from there, meet up with them, they're an interesting couple. Will is like a sort of like a halfling. He's from the most well-known sort of berserker race of what's called Kagans. They're a brutal, bloodlusting, incredibly ferocious warriors. Yet Will is a poet. He's musical. He's into the arts, right? He just doesn't fit the mold. And the reason why he's in the asylum is linked to that. And Will also has this nature where he's incredibly unnaturally, I should say, lucky. And there's reason for that too, but he just seem to incredibly go his way in terms of chance. And so he's come along with this other ferocious inmate called Michael, and Michael is really a force to be reckoned with. And Michael has a huge part to play in the story. So they're our opening sort of group that we come across through the first book that start to come together and form this interesting pack. And we explore the world as Arlex escapes through it. We start to find out more about the world around us.
Oh wow! So this is the first book in a trilogy, in a longer series?
Yeah. So it's a longer open-ended series, but it was originally drafted as it is a trilogy to start with, and then goes to open-ended. So it is a trilogy, opening trilogy, because it was written, that opening book was all written as one huge story.
I see.
So I decided to cut it down, and because it was too long, and so it made for a good trilogy. So this is part one, and then we got obviously two more that round out that trilogy, but then the series will continue on from there.
Are you working on the fourth book now, or
No, so I'm finishing off getting 2 and 3 out. So
okay. Yeah. Oh, I thought they were out. Okay. So only book 1 is out. No, this sounds so interesting, and because it just sounded like there was a lot more. So I was like, let me check my assumptions.
So two's following hot on the heels. It got delayed. It got delayed due to some stuff. But then it's written. It just needs to get some final a couple of final passovers, and then 3's written too, and so same in that regard. So then they'll just be getting those 2 out.
Are they
in the future
coming out at the end of this year, or we should look for them in 2024?
So 2's this year, and 3 will be next year. And it'll be so I'll be able to give more details of 2, but I can't wait, to be honest, because like for those readers who've already read 1, 2's probably my favorite, the stuff where we start getting into in 2. And so the readers are telling me how what they've liked about 1, I can't wait to let them see what these characters get up to in 2, and what we discover more about the world. So it's pretty But for me, I just love that. I love it when I can talk to people who have read it and enjoyed it, and answer their questions about what might be coming, what else might be happening with these characters.
I haven't ever talked to anybody who's actually read my books.
You're right.
Someday I hope to have that sort of I mean, I get emails from a couple of my couple of readers that have been with me since the very beginning, and I love you guys very much. But not like that sounds like you've talked to them in person. Which if you had, I'm kind of jealous because I have not gotten to do that yet.
They're friends and family. I mean, I'm not gonna. No, there is a couple. I have spoken. No, not live. I haven't spoken live to a reader face to face that I did already know
outside of family. Okay. Because like my mom is like my biggest. I mean, she's my mother. She's my biggest fan. She is the one who's like, all right, when's the next book? I need more. So she's the reason that I get so many books out per year, because she's my mom. I talk to her every couple of days, and she's like, when's the next book coming? You're working on it? Why don't I have it? Why aren't you done?
To know what the characters are doing.
Would you just tell the characters to behave?
So these guys go on quite a journey, and what I wanted to. So it was kind of, it's twofold, right, for a reader, because it's the characters have got some really interesting stuff going on. So
Yeah.
it's this ultimately for me, the
It's a
characters
deep
really take
world.
it. Yeah,
It's a deep world that they're living in.
yeah, but that's right. The good thing is though that I've got these characters. They're traveling, and they're experiencing some of this stuff because, like for Arlex hasn't even been out of the city. So, well, he was born in another city, and then he kind of ended up in New Tartarus. But he's getting to explore the land and starts to get to know a lot more about what's going on in the world that he didn't ever realize. They've got a fascinating, this religion is got a fascinating stuff. They've behind the St. Malus Cathedral, which Malus, by the way, is the overlord, self-appointed saint and overlord of the city. But St. Malus Cathedral has this pillar of flame behind it. It stretches from the back of the cathedral to infinity. It's this silent pillar of flame that worshippers come to and dispose of their dead in. So there's this whole tradition around having to get your dead to the pillar within a certain amount of time, so that its soul can be taken. And it's silent, which is weird, but it goes. You can see it from anywhere. You see this thing stretching up into the sky. Yeah, so which is another fascinating part, and it seems again there's a lot of questions about, well, what is this pillar of flame? Why is it there? Why? What does it exist for? It doesn't have a purpose. That's we start only get introduced to it in book one, but then later on, Arlex starts to as they start to uncover more about what's going on in the world around them. That's becomes part of the puzzle. Yeah.
So he's got to figure out all of that.
He's got so much. He's just really just like, just want to get away from these people that are chasing me to start with, and then what is happening to him? Yeah, he starts to get really worried about the stuff that's happening to him, and some of the, we see evidence of some pretty strong abilities, incredibly powerful stuff, but with no control over it. Totally, totally random events, and in fact, at some point, Victor feels a bit of it, like when he's doing some hands-on healing. Victor sees a bit of it rush through him, and so that really starts to get Victor motivated, that some of that power was able to come through, and he was able to use it. So he becomes, whoa, there's something going on off, some sort of alarm going off in the background. Just stop it.
Are the characters calling you?
Did it. Got it. The bells. The bells.
Is that the characters trying to tell you to stop doing spoilers?
Stop it. You're saying way too much. You are saying way too much. Yeah. So that's kind of where it's at.
And this is all in book one that we've been talking
about book one. And book two starts to touch on these aspects. We start to just touch on them and think, wow, okay.
Well, yeah, because he's kind of running. You get a whole lot of discovery when you're running.
We're running, we're fighting, we're escaping. Yeah, there's lots of danger around, but then we start to uncover clues and along the way that reveal themselves more as we get through the trilogy. And by the end of the trilogy, there is actually some there is answers. Much more answers to what's really going on behind the scenes, and then it creates a real direction for the rest of the series to come. So
I see. So all right, so there's a Nephilim horde hunting him. So like the Nephilim in your world, what do they look like? Do they look like me and you? Do they look like?
Yeah, they're kind of humanoid.
Like, what are they like?
they're humanoid, monstrous sort of. almost ogreish type creatures. One of the things in this world is Malice's own creations. So there's a natural order of things, but then there's some beautiful creations. So the beauty comes from an evolution of new generation of humans. So there's and they're all more elite than the lower level originals.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, having a beard is a sign of low class. That you are Homo sapien. You're a sape. You're none of the evolved gens. The evolved gens are welcome in the beautiful parts of the city. They live a good lives, wealthy lives, and the higher up in the gens that you are, the newer versions, the more privileges you get, and so these are these beautiful new creations that are coming through as civilization, new species. But on the flip side, there's also monsters, monstrous versions of twisted evolution. So so the Nephilim are part of that, and they're his army. Malice tries to use them more outside of the city than inside, because of the perception inside the city is maintained, but outside the city, they're much more active, as well as a number of beasts and hybrids that he's created also. So there's this these evolved species that we see as well. So the Nephilim are his monstrous horde, and we get introduced to them first in Downshade Asylum in the common room where Michael and Will live in the start of the story. In Downshade Asylum, they're in the basement of the asylum, where they're just sort of left to fend for themselves to a degree, and their security is a Nephilim that's chained to the corner that the security guards can detach at any time if things get a bit too rough down there, and let it loose. And it's they've actually let off the chain a few times, but when Michael is first introduced, he's not too pleased with it, and there's something that's happened with the Nephilim that prompts a pretty ferocious and insane reaction from Michael with the Nephilim that's chained to the corner. So there's a bit of action there, and meanwhile Will's using his luck to extricate himself and whoever he can from the situation.
Oh, wow.
So that's how we kick off in Downshade.
Yeah. So you said that they're created. So who's creating them? Is it Malice? Is it someone else?
Yeah, so it's Malice with others. Yeah, so it's Malice's and his entourage.
What are they? Are they human with magic? Are they
something
else?
It's not. We don't go into that yet. Yeah, so it's unknown at this point how that's all.
So that's uncharted territory.
Yeah. So we don't know, but people know that it's but it's known. So that's kind of the where we're at in the start, and we get to learn more about the characters and what to put them there, and and the world. So
What do the characters think about like Malice and his entourage, like just creating beings and giving some of them nice places to live, some of them not so nice? Like is that just like they're just so used to it that is Malice somebody who's been in power like their whole lives, and it's just like, okay, this is just a thing. This is just an artifact of the world that I live in.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't get to have an opinion on this. This is the norm.
Yeah. So early on, there's a time when Arlex and Victor are kind of escaping through a plaza, and the plaza is a series of statues to Malice and his predecessors as well. So Malice isn't although Malice has sort of been there as long as they can remember for their lives. There's previous these statues going down this pathway of those overlords before him.
Oh no, did the characters decide that you're giving away too many spoilers again?
So we back?
Yep, you're back.
So there we go. So revealed a pretty big point there. But look, there's the sapes, pretty much us, our species. We're quite resentful of the higher gens and all the privileges afforded to them. But there's no choice. A lot of the sapes are downtrodden. That many of them are not in the city. They're in villages outside, but they often get abducted and forced into servitude. Their resources are taken from them. There is some natural evolved species as well that are not engineered. So we learn about some cultures where there's some natural changes because so much time has passed, so there has been ability for even evolution, and the people just kind of accept it, but then they know that it's just there, but they're really not happy about it. Like Malice is not someone who's he's really just appreciated by the gens and those that benefit from him. But for the others, like for Michael, Will, our characters, it's he's definitely an evil figure to them, and someone that's led to many atrocities that they've observed in their lives. So so no, they're not happy about it, and it's just the way things are. Unfortunately, they just know that that's their lives. In Tartarus and its surroundings. Yeah.
So that's how Malice, I guess, stays in power, because those higher gens, if they're benefiting, then they're going to keep they're incentivized to keep a system that they are benefiting from.
Yeah, and super powerful, and the court around him, that also helps to prop that up. He's got of course his army that supports him, and a range of other creatures that he can always use to serve his needs, and powerful in his own sense as well. So quite an interesting figure. But yeah, there's it's covered in the blurb that there is demonic elements to his position and his existence. So these, and not just New Tartarus, but in the cities around the world, this is coming from the leaking through of demonic presence into the earth that's allowing all this to happen.
Are there is there like I guess there's no more angels around to battle with those demonic forces?
Well,
it doesn't sound like it, or they're off somewhere having a nice vacation because the world ended. They did their thing.
So yeah, after the war in heaven and hell, they all, it was considered done and dusted, and the gods moved on, and yet there was some opportunistic demons, really low level, senior enough one that was able to observe and get through to the earth, right, and plant some of these seeds. Now, this is just speculation, but I'd imagine that if there's a remnant there of demons, you could only hope that there's maybe at least one angel in there somewhere that may have fallen through. So may not even be aware of it, but could be in there somewhere.
Well, maybe book 4 you can find when you get
Yeah,
to writing that you can find out if where this person is.
yeah. No, look, we'll probably come across it earlier than that. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so you'll see. Yeah, it's intriguing question, Melinda. But I think you've hit the nail on the head there. That there's someone in there, and it's not Arlex. It's not Arlex, but there's someone in there that they might discover that could be really really helpful. May not want to be, but that could be really helpful to them in the long run.
I mean, it sounds like they need it.
Yeah, it's not pretty bad. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be there. But yeah, so yeah, so we'll see that the readers will definitely see an element of that come through. Even in book one, they'll I haven't spoiled anything. In book one they'll be like, oh right, I wonder if it's that influence or that person or that situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's look, and the other thing is they do come across some incredible stuff. So although it's not a nice city, New Tartarus, and they do live a sheltered life, so they start to understand more. Arlex starts to learn more about the world. He was pretty young when he got taken. He came from a seaside village. There was all sorts of atrocities by the Nephilim on his family, and he's kind of the only one left, but start to explore more about the world and what is out there, and is there still good in the world for Sapes, or is it only for the higher ups? So someone had written to me that I didn't intend on this, but there was a little bit of social commentary in that. But I guess there is, right? I mean, that's kind of where we see ourselves sometimes in those sorts of in our lives, where there is the privileged that want to keep the status quo, but that status quo is at the expense of many downtrodden beneath. Yeah. So yeah.
So
But, yeah.
why is the city called New Tartarus? Like, why did they name it that?
So so New Tartarus is linked to the underworld, and so it's almost like I think Tartarus is capital city of the underworld. So New Tartarus, I guess, is the first of many of cities that have now popped up around the planet that are bringing, it's almost like they're trying to bring about hell on earth, I guess.
So who named the city?
Don't know. Yeah. I don't know where that's come from. Yeah.
No, I'm just curious. It just sounds like there's a story there.
Yeah. Well, all of it points to, starts to point to a bigger narrative, a bigger intent underlying it all. There is something at play here, that this is not all by chance.
Right.
There is
No, it sounds very deliberate. That's why I was like, this is
yeah.
just staring me in the face, begging me to ask the question.
But we've got no idea. Look, in book one, we've got no idea what's motivating this. But
you've written books 2 and 3. Like, is that
sure.
something that comes up in there? Like,
Yeah.
like why it's called New Tartarus? Like, who named? Like, a little bit about
not so much there, but we know that there is.
There's a reason.
We know that Malus has a conversation, and he has prayer almost with his god, and the god is a character by the name of incredibly powerful demon called Belial, and a lot of this centuries of longer eons of work that's been put in here to the earth is serving Belial, and so we'll discover over the books why. What is it? What is his end game? What is it he's trying to achieve? And so Malus is one of his. Although Malus is the overlord, everyone answers to somebody. So Malus and his equivalent. So there's equivalents of Malus all over the planet, all over the world. So he's just the one overlord for New Tartarus, but he does have his peers. But they're not getting into. We're not getting into that in the trilogy. But I imagine that's where the series is going to head. Is we've come across our first overlord in Malus, and but Belial's servants have infiltrated the whole world. So it's a big tale when we start to explore the bigger truths and what's buried, what we're going to uncover, and how long this has been in play. And in fact, we even get to elements that stretch all the way back to our own biblical times. So
wow.
Things get really, really crazy. So there's one group of the only hint of that at this in the trilogy is this long line of assassins called the Sicarii, and the Sicarii have links back to Judas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
I get it, because Judas, yeah,
all the way back there, right? So but the Sicarii aren't bad. Well, they're not necessarily good either, but that's where we start to uncover that there's links back to. We even have links to our present. Like we come across a horde of 20th century and 21st century items at some point, where just that are quite curious as some characters discover elements from the last civilization of man, before the new age.
So, all right. So in your world, at what year did the apocalypse happen?
It's
they haven't found out yet.
They don't know. They
do you know? And you're just not saying. Okay.
Yeah, it's not.
Okay. So how many years left do we have before we're?
Yeah. We're okay for a bit longer. But I'd live for the moment, I guess, is what I could say. Yeah.
So the apocalypse is not going to happen until we've at least got the trilogy out.
Yeah, we'll be able to read more about it before we get there. So
okay, all right. Just checking, just making sure. Because that would be sad if the apocalypse came before we got before we got the next couple of books in the series.
I'm hoping that if I get it written, that we can avoid it.
Okay.
If I can let the readers understand what's happened in the future, maybe we won't have to live through what this future looks like.
All right, so you better be writing every night so that we can, because if you're the one stopping the apocalypse, and we need you to keep writing every night.
Yeah. I've got to get it out. I've got to get the story out so we can avoid it.
Writer's block. Your writer's block could doom us all. No pressure. Maybe a little. Maybe just a little bit of pressure.
So we've got some. But I got a kick out of that part of the story coming through, which was, and it comes through in quite an interesting spot where there's someone who there's only I think one person that we come across who has awareness of what happened before, and that person is a bit nostalgic. So they
are they truthful? Hey? Are they truthful, or are they one of those whatchamacallit, the unreliable?
Oh no, they're reliable, but they're reliable. They're reliable. They're reliable. They've got a lot of nostalgia because they're aware of what was lost, but they're also.
Did they live through it?
In a way, yeah. But yeah, they did.
Are
They
you
did.
sure?
They are
Final
very,
answer.
they're very, very traumatized, yeah, from it. Which is, yeah. So it's pretty cool.
I'm sorry I'm
Pretty cool.
grilling you. I'm only grilling you because I have actually like
Mm.
plans to write a trilogy of books about a war in heaven and
Yeah,
hell.
right. Yeah.
I
But this
actually wrote
happened.
a scene from it. Like that's part of another book I'm working on.
Yeah.
So
So
like my brain is churning on that. Like who's
yeah.
our
So you,
heroes? Who's our villains? Why
yeah.
are we doing this?
But this is after your books, right? So this is after your books. That's already happened. Yeah.
The war in
Your war
heaven
in
would
heaven and
be
hell.
thousands and thousands of years before it, but the
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
war in heaven, no, it would be contemporary with current books,
Yeah.
and the
Right.
war in
Right.
hell would be contemporary with current books.
Yeah. 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 So yeah. So that's yeah. There's a couple of interesting things that evolve out of that too. So we'll see. We'll see. But ultimately, there's this. For me, I love to understand more about the world, and I'm learning it as we go as well. So there's bits of it that I learn through Arlex and the characters as they explore it. Also, so I wanted to set it up so that my experience of the world was through Alex's discovery of it, and the people around him. But there is some characters that know more than he does, and it's a bit of a puzzle as we explore and start to build the pieces, and then but then where it goes from here is it's but I feel like it started for me with the world,
Mm,
but then I ended up falling in love with these characters, and it's really them. So it's great that they have this playground
mhm.
that they're traveling through, and the way that they then be able to interact with it is really what makes it exciting for me. These people like like Alex and China Dawn, and the way that they all start to interact becomes interesting. Yeah.
You mentioned you might read another excerpt. Do you want to do that
Okay.
yet? Because
I
I want to hear
can.
another excerpt. I've been waiting for an appropriate moment to ask that because the
I've
first one
got
was
one.
short, and I was like, I want more.
Yeah, I've got
So this seems like a good opportunity because the characters have already interfered with you answering and giving us spoilers multiple times now.
yeah, I
So
might do I might do a bit about Will, because it sort of starts to show a bit about um his luck powers, right? So we're in Will. This is a bit further on. It starts off. So I've got some really short. I like to do really short chapters. They're almost like they're pretty much just scenes. I like really choppy, fast moving kind of points that I intersperse. So it's chapter 4, but it's not far in. And we're in Downshade Asylum. We're with Will, and I like to jump around my point of view a bit. And it's event minus 15 minutes. So the event was Alex's event, right? So we're now 15 minutes, just 15 minutes before that. So and we've just been in the Downshade Asylum common room where something's gone down with where Damiel, a new inmate, is getting a tour of the of the of the basement, the zoo as it's called, and he's met Wendy, the Nephilim that's chained to the corner. And so he was in the process of that. So I'll kick off from here, right? So at the same time that Damiel was completing his tour of Downshade's basement level, along the corridor in the zoo's washrooms, Will was conducting a clandestine venture with a select group of his fellow inmates. They could still hear the grunts and roars of the Nephilim from within the tiled washing area, but they were also used to it that none of them noticed it anymore, not grasping that these sounds were different this time. Will had another inmate, Finn, stand against one of the grimy tiled walls. Unlike Will, Finn was big, the biggest of Will's followers, but dim-witted. Thick sweat rolled down Finn's forehead and down his nose, forming droplets on the tip before leaping free and splashing to the ground. With both hands, he gripped a green apple out in front of his body. He shook so much, the apple nearly popped out of his clammy grip. Relax, Finn, Will called from across the room. It's best if you just keep still. Will had managed to gather roughly 20 inmates into the zoo's communal showers to conduct a contest of sorts, a wager. He swaggered back and forth behind a table where he managed the business end of the proceedings, loudly chewing on some resin and stretching his arms, preparing for his amazing feat. Will knew how to work an audience, and he had this lot churned to a frenzy. They were all bunched together in a blur of grey uniforms, all twitching, hooting, and hollering, just the way he liked them. Accumulated on one end of the table were Will's potential winnings. These were a mess of what passed as currency in the zoo. A substantial amount of rika, some fluff, colourful but useless all the same, a dead roach, crumpled bits of paper, some string, a shoe, wax, hair, half a bar of soap, and a comb, all thrown in by the majority of the onlookers as their wages against him. On the other end of the table was a small mound of pills in all shapes, colours, and sizes. Will's own stockpile. He had put this forward as collateral should he fail in his stunt. The pile of pills carried the weight of 10 trunks of jewels down here. Will was happy to put this forward if it secured him an audience, not that he thought there was a risk of losing any of it. Finn, too, had contributed to Will's side of the wager with a paper cup. Will had also contributed the only bit of money in the entire bet, 1 bronze check, on behalf of Michael, who he believed to be still holding some sort of personal vigil out in the common room. So the wager stood at Will, Finn, and Michael, via proxy, in favour of Will achieving the feat, everyone else against. Even Will's entourage hadn't backed him. Rather, they had contributed a sizable wager of nail clippings against him. The 3 of them currently danced around him, struggling to blindfold him as he danced to stand still. People often underestimated Will in wagers because of his appearance, and he took advantage of this to draw a crowd and lure unsuspecting challengers into betting generously against him. Will was a Kagan and displayed all the characteristics of the fierce Orientals. Shortness in stature, large protruding ears, no nose. And although Will was far from your typical Kagan, he played his race card for all it was worth at times like this, laying on his accent extra thick to reinforce the image. His people were renowned for being indomitable warriors, a reputation born out of a combination of incredible courage and ridiculous stubbornness rather than any combat proficiency. He'd heard their fighting style best summed up as drunken berserker. They were not known for their agility or grace. Will was quite unlike his warrior brethren. For Will, it was all about the performance. Before the blindfold finally went on, Will scribbled out some hurried autographs on shreds of cardboard he'd found, much to the confusion of those inmates that received them. As he drew the flamboyant loops and swirls of his signature, he called out to Finn to hold the apple higher. Finn complied by moving the apple up in front of his nose, sending the crowd wild. They became so raucous that it drowned out the commotion that had flared up outside. Will was aware of something going on, but presumed it was the usual evening ruckus and continued with his stunt. Eventually, Will stood still long enough for his assistants to put his blindfold on, although they still struggled to fasten it due to Will being so short and, as with all of his folk, having no nose to act as a prop. In the end, they secured it by kneeling around him and tying it painfully tight around his well-proportioned ears. The assistants guided him around to the front of the table, then retreated. Will took a solid stance, facing Finn square on, with about 3 body lengths between them. He reached his hand over his shoulder, and one of his attendees placed a rusty scalpel in it. Will gripped its blade between thumb and forefinger. He exhaled once and prepared to throw. Finn, who wished he too was wearing a blindfold but was too petrified to close his eyes, pushed back hard against the mustard-coloured tiles. His grip was so tight on the apple that it danced around in front of his face, effectively now making it a moving target for Will to hit. "Here we go," Will announced, prompting gasps from the audience. "As much as I hate to take your stuff, I am proud to entertain and dazzle you with what I am about to perform. Prepare He paused for effect, like the master showman that he is, to be, one more pause, this time triggering hushed anticipation from the crowd, as Will knew it would. Amazed, Will tensed, but the entire room shook just as he began to move, causing him to pause mid-throw to steady himself. All the lights in the washroom cycled from brilliant bright to deep darkness as the ground continued to rumble, growing in intensity. The quake was so strong, it tossed the onlookers up against each other and around the room. Will, still blindfolded, put the scalpel between his teeth and fumbled to find something to hold on to. Luckily, his hands met the rougher timber of the table and he gripped it with both hands, steadying himself. Even this was a struggle as the table lurched across the floor from the onslaught. Eventually, the lights resumed their glow, the rumbling stopped, and things returned to normal, or whatever passed for normal in this place. Finn was even more spooked now, but still stood in position, holding the apple. Will remained hunched over, gripping the table, albeit a few meters from where it stood earlier. The spectators who were disentangling themselves and returning to their original viewing positions believed this disruption would play to their advantage with this bet. That is, in rattling Will's composure. And they screamed at him to proceed. Will, never the professional, let go of the table and stood straight. He called for one of his assistants to point him towards Finn and readjust his blindfold. This drew the loudest cheers from the crowd yet. Will took a deep breath and flicked the scalpel hard at Finn. Only, instead of flying towards Finn's face, the blade traveled downward towards his leg. The onlookers followed the scalpel's trajectory through the air as it headed nowhere near the direction of the apple and, as one, clasped hands with eye-twinkling joy, realizing that they had won. Outside the room, however, the Nephilim was throwing Michael from the common room down the corridor. At the exact instant that the blade left Will's hand, Michael flew past the entrance to the washroom as a fleeting blur and crashed headlong into the guard's gate at the end of the hallway with a resounding clang. This had been the last straw for Finn. Upon hearing the noise from the corridor, he panicked and lost his tenuous grip on the apple. The apple dropped, falling down the front of Finn's body, and as it passed his left thigh, it entered the path of the scalpel. The crowd's expression transformed into shocked disbelief as the scalpel pierced the apple skin and embedded itself up to its hilt. The blade's momentum drove the apple into Finn's knee, then it bounced off and struck the floor. The room went silent as all eyes watched the scalpel-impaled apple loll awkwardly back and forth across the tiles until it came to a rest. The room erupted. The onlookers hollered accusations of fraud and demanded a no contest. But on this occasion, Will wasn't there to defend his wager. He was already racing out into the hall. So there we see a bit of Will's luck.
How does he have no nose?
They don't have noses, the Kagans. Everyone knows that.
But how do they breathe with no nose?
Through their mouths, pretty much. They can do a lot more with their ears. So we learn more about the Kagan race. Their orifices do a bit differently to ours. Yeah, it doesn't mean they can't smell. I thought you might have said the old joke there, Melinda. Well, how can he smell? You know, how does he smell? Terrible. But no, you know, he used to get teased about it not having the nose. But yeah, it's just a way that their race has managed to grow.
To exist after the apocalypse.
Yeah, that's right. So you can imagine if it's allowed for Homo sapiens to even have evolved species, a lot of time has passed from our age. It's an eon. It really is an eon away, but yet still with some tendrils, some tenuous links. Although there's one very strong link all the way back, a line going all the way back through.
Yeah, and I noticed. Yeah, and I noticed you used Oriental, which is kind of it's not PC to use.
It's not PC, but
yeah,
it's a term they use. It's a term they use in the world. Yeah, they Yeah.
So, yeah, because I was like, do you get any flack from readers for that?
No, so that's because it's kind of I haven't and look if it and I've even checked with people that are some Asian friends and said look it's in the context of the story that they do have this this term. They don't because for them they wouldn't use the word Asian in
Right.
appearance and so but in this sort of oldie style way that they still talk it's there is and there's other slurs. Well, nothing too serious, but
Okay.
um,
I mean, I
the
guess as long as you got the slurs for other if
yeah,
everybody's if you're using if you're using terms for everybody's
yeah,
origins, then I guess like I don't know. That'd be interesting to get a sensitivity reader's take on that.
yeah, yeah. So I have asked them. So far, look, and if it was something that people were to share with me that they probably think it's unnecessary in the context, then I would be happy to remove it. But
I was just
yeah,
wondering because you've got the
yeah,
no nose, the big ears, and then you're saying, well, that saying that that's something that is
yeah,
characteristic of their race, and then pairing with the Orientals, like it sounds very derogatory.
yeah, right.
So I was like, I gotta question this. I can't let
Yeah,
this
yeah.
pass.
Yeah. So yeah, but no, it's not been an issue so far. Yeah. But it's not that they're it's more that they are from the region of the Orient rather than that they are Orientals. Although I said, it does say Orientals, but it's more that they're from that region of the Orient. Yeah.
And like just for clarification, like what is the region of the Orient in your world?
So it is the same. It is the same areas that we're. Well, I guess it is. Is it? I don't know. Because the land structures are still there, so they are
Okay, because
similar.
like continents didn't like disappear and new continents appear. Because like I'm figuring like if we had a biblical like if you read the book of Revelations, like
Yeah.
the Earth's not looking like it does in our day.
No. So
Like the
lands have.
continents are not. So anybody who existed is like probably not from anywhere like where they're currently living has nothing to do with what was there before,
No,
or maybe
exactly.
there'd be some places that managed to stick around, but like it wouldn't be all that many.
Yeah. No. But there's definitely changes to the landscape, but uh, there's some similar areas as well. Yeah. 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 So yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
no, just
Yeah. So
curious.
that's yeah. So there we go. That was
That was Will.
a bit from Will being inside downshade and when we first start to that's really when we first meet Will
Mm-hmm.
and start to understand where he is in the scheme of things and his relationship with Michael, who's you can see already that they've got a closer starts to
Is
he's a close
Michael gonna
relationship.
survive getting thrown down a hallway into a
Yeah, so
gate? Because
yeah,
that sounds like bone. I'm imagining bones crunching. You
yeah.
sliding down in a puddle of pain,
So
possibly
Michael's
blood.
so Michael's strong. So Michael's unusually strong. So we understand what how is it that Michael survives some of what he's just been through and what Will's
And
going to discover when he goes out there.
why? Why did they? Who? Why did the Nephilim throw him across down the hallway? Like, what did he do
Michael,
to piss it that
yeah,
off?
it's Michael's fault. So yeah, he started it. So
So he's
we'll
getting what he deserves.
yeah, he started it. He yeah, he got into it. He got into it. He should have known better, but he didn't care. He didn't really care.
Should we hear that scene of like what sparked that whole,
Yeah,
or is
we
that too
can.
much of a
Do you want me
spoiler?
to?
Yeah,
Do you want me
I'm
to?
kind of since you've emphasized throughout the whole interview this is so much about the characters. I feel like we should, if it's not giving too much away, it might be good to get an excerpt from
We
each of
can.
the characters in his cohort just so we can get a feel for them. And I just want to know, like, what did Michael do to get thrown down the hall? Like,
Yeah.
did you
Look,
say
we can see.
something?
I can definitely talk about. We can look at kind of. We can go through a little bit about that.
Yeah,
The
no, I think that might be nice to get, like, some of the his his whatchamacallit, not posse, his not entourage, the group that,
Yeah.
I mean, is whatever ones you want to introduce on here, since it is so much about the characters.
Yeah. I mean, we've got.
I mean, if you have time, because we've already been talking for an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah,
And a little
look,
bit
I'd love
before
to hear
that. Like,
more.
I mean, I have some time, but I don't know what I
If
know
it's
it's
okay
early
with you,
morning
I'm
for
happy
you.
to read
I'm
more.
fine with it. I'm
Yeah,
having a
okay,
good
cool.
time.
So then, look, let's go back. It's the previous scene, really. So we can, I guess, I'll go through a few pages of this, and then you can get a bit more of an idea of where Michael sort of comes into it. So we've kind of got. Yeah, all right. So I'll start reading it. So, Downshade Asylum got Michael. This is 25 event minus 25 minutes. So we're going to go on about 10 minutes back to where we were introduced to Will, where he was trying to do his little wager in the washroom. So look, it was the witching hour, okay, at Downshade Asylum. That time of heightened lunacy just before supper, not long from lights out. Michael crouched against a dark corner of the common room, his wrists resting on his knees. He glowered through the ragged strands of hair that fell over his face at the beast chained to the opposite corner of the room. The other inmates paid it no mind, but were careful to give it a wide berth. Its incredible stench permeated the entire ward, but most had got used to this by now. They even grew accustomed to its grunts and roars, which could be heard from well beyond the asylum's walls. Michael remembered growls resounding from within the complex on the day that he climbed out of Unland, traversed the plateau on which the asylum sat, and approached its huge grey doors. He remembered how surprised he was at what a clear and pleasant evening it had been. He had expected it to be raining a deluge that night, the night that he finally gave up on his exceedingly long life. It would have been fitting. Out of the 2,000 odd almost only sapient population housed in Downshade, Michael was the only one that was self-admitted. Since most of the inmates never left the asylum alive, the penance he had subjected himself to was a long and wretched one. Not that anyone cared. If you were prepared to subject yourself voluntarily to the torment of this place, then you clearly were crazy enough to belong here. Him, a pair of voices broke Michael's thoughts. Yeah, there's not much to tell. Is Michael been here longer than anyone can remember? Don't talk much. Best you leave that one alone. The idiot talking, that'd be Dribbler. He'd christened him this because of the constant stream of drool that stretched from his lips to a wet patch on his gown, a result of his incessant babbling. He looks real messed up, an unfamiliar voice said. Real messed up. I will wonder why he's so messed up. Another stuttering fool, this one. There were many that stammered in the ward, but this voice he didn't recognize. Must be another new loon arriving, so green that he was still on his orientation. What's he in for? The stutterer said. Dribbler shrugged. No one knows. He then dropped his voice to give it an ominous tone. They say he's here of his own free will. Dribbler raised his eyebrows as he let that last statement sink in for his inductee. He allowed enough time for the newbie to display the customary look of shocked disbelief and then burst out laughing, slapping the poor sod on his back. He's been in that position for weeks now, Dribbler said. Only moves to use the toilet, won't shower or even collect his meals, and lets any matter of vermin crawl all over him. Hell, if his little friend Will didn't feed him each day, he'd be starved by now. All we'd be looking at in that corner is a pile of old bones and a beard. Michael could hear the smile in Dribbler's voice. But don't let his looks fool ya, Dribbler now adopted a conspiratorial tone. Sure, he looks weak and his eyes may be dull, but here's the skin. You can get as close as you like. He won't move so much as an inch. but go to touch him, those eyes will blaze green and you'll be smarting into next week without even having seen what hit you. Lucky if you don't end up in the infirmary. Michael still didn't look up. He could just imagine the newbie staring at him wide-eyed now with his unkempt mop of hair and long, tangled beard. He imagined he must have looked part Methuselah, part Rip Van Winkle. Of course, both these references would be unfamiliar to these men. Perhaps to them his appearance was just plain old crazy hermit. Good, keep away. If he's so miserable and he's not forced to be here, well, why don't he just leave? Newbie asked. And there it is, Dribbler said. You got to the question quicker than most. Why stay? Because he's scared. He is scared that if he leaves, he'll find out that he liked it better in our nut house than he does out there. He's crazier than the lot of us put together. Not clearly as crazy as you, Dribbler, you halfwit. Come on, Dribbler said. You need to meet Wendy. But first, I'll show you where we pick up our grub. Sure, let's meet Wendy. The stutterer's stare lingered on Michael a while longer as Dribbler dragged him forward. Wendy. A flippant term for the same beast that Michael had been surveying. Dribbler had a moronic tradition of ending his tours by pretending to throw the newcomer into the arms of the Nephilim as they passed it by, then pulling them to safety at the last moment. It was intended to scare the wits out of a newbie, with any luck, making them cry or wet their pants to the great amusement of the rest of the inmates in the block. Michael wondered what ailed this noob. What was it about him that brought him to Downshade? Or better yet, what was it that brought him down here to where the nuttiest nutters end up? The asylum's basement. The zoo. He seemed bright, lucid even, and there were 3 floors of perfectly normal lunatics above them. For them to house him down here meant he was extra special. Finger-licking loco. The basement itself was special too. It was not a part of Downshade's original blueprint, but was an unearthed portion of a much older structure they had discovered during the asylum's construction and then incorporated it into the final building. No one knew its original purpose, but the basement's design was unlike that of the rest of the sterile facility. It certainly lived up to its namesake with its rough red earthen walls and floors, tall ceiling and rusty iron bars, forming rooms that were basically an assembly of large cages. One of the more popular theories of its previous use was that it had once housed a menagerie of colossal beasts. There wasn't a single window in the basement as it was below ground level, making the air feel thick and old and giving the inmates the only perception of night and day via its artificial light cycle. The common room in which Michael now squatted was at the far end of the basement, just before the main dorm room where most of the zoo's inmates slept. The term room was a stretch here, as the entire fourth wall joining the dorm to the common room was just a series of bars. Cell would have been more appropriate. The common room led out to a long corridor, which was flanked by the communal baths on one side and the isolation rooms on the other. And at the end of the aisle, behind a barred gate, sat the guard station and access to the rest of the asylum. Dribbler was showing the noob how meals were dispensed, which meant his unofficial tour was drawing to an end, and the next part would be his cruel joke. The noob, however, was no longer paying any attention to Dribbler. His attention had already drifted over to the shackled Nephilim. He had undoubtedly never seen one before. For most residents of New Tartarus, Nephilim were the subject of folklore and fairy tales. Nephilim were rarely, if ever, seen inside the city. They were Malice's crusader army, and he used them mainly to control the settlements outside of New T. Michael, however, had had more than his fair share of dealings with the foul beasts. Wendy, like all Nephilim, was enormous. A giant humanoid creature hunched over on 2 tree trunk legs, and when it stood erect, its head scraped against the top of the high ceiling, dislodging centuries-old dirt. Its overgrown facial features were mashed together. Its black eyes twinkled from beneath the folds of its leathery grey skin. It sniffed in the newcomer's direction with twitches from its runty nose, craving human flesh. Michael loathed it. It was an abomination. He remembered a time when a creature such as this didn't exist, when they couldn't exist. But things had changed. Everything was more fluid now. The world was stretched thin, corrupted. The noob was drawing nearer to the shackled Nephilim and could not tear his eyes from it, nor had the creature taken its eyes away from him. The way they gazed at each other could have laughably been mistaken for love at first sight. It was half true on the creature's part, that is, although love wasn't exactly the right word. Craving was more appropriate. It had learned the way Dribbler's tours ended and hoped that this time, for once, the outcome would be in its favour. Wendy salivated over the noob, slobber oozing from its jaws, a Pavlovian reaction in its purest form. Michael snorted at the thought of this, another reference long lost across the ages. Despite the bars, locks, and guards in the zoo, the administration had deemed it necessary to install an additional low-tech and cost-effective security precaution by chaining a Nephilim to the corner of the common room. Hence, the inmates of the zoo gained a pet and found themselves responsible for the beast and for ensuring that it remained alive. A rusted chain held the Nephilim via a metal collar, tethered to a Nova-sized ring on the wall. This, too, was a remnant of the basement's mysterious history. The Nephilim's presence helped to keep inmate unrest to a minimum. Any civilian guard who patrolled the basement could detach its chain remotely at any moment to quell any fracas. Guards didn't need to bother entering the zoo. They monitored it with disinterest from their post at the other side of the basement, not caring what the inmates got up to, knowing that if things got too out of hand, they could just unleash the beast. In his entire time at Downshade, Michael could count on his hands the number of times a guard had released a Nephilim in the zoo. He tried hard to forget the carnage that had ensued each time. Suffice to say, it did do a lot for the cramped conditions down here, opening up lots of empty beds, sort of like a natural culling of the basement. Whenever a Nephilim had been released, the guards had no choice but to kill it. It was much too difficult to recapture it, so they had been through several pets. Wendy was their latest. Click, click. Dribbler slapped his fingers at the noob, trying unsuccessfully to draw his attention away from the Nephilim. Damiel, hey! So that was the newbie's name. Damiel. Like the angel. Click, click, click. This time Dribbler snapped less than an inch from Damiel's nose. This brought his attention back. You have to remember to close the chute, Dribbler said, successfully distracting him as he steered him back towards the Nephilim. Or else we'll be eating our chow off the floor. Poor lad. Michael turned his attention back to the Nephilim, which was shuddering in anticipation. Most of the zoo's inmates were now focused on the corner of the common room. Finally, as Damiel veered into the perfect position, Dribbler struck. Oh, I almost forgot, Damiel. Meet Wendy! He shoved Damiel full force into the path of the Nephilim, across the semicircular chalk line in the ruddy ground that marked the edge of the creature's reach. Damiel shrieked. Dribbler cackled with laughter. The creature reared upward. Then, in a lightning-quick motion, much faster than he looked capable of, Dribbler shot his arm out, grabbed Damiel's gown, and pulled him back out of harm's way. Or would have. Except the section of Damiel's gown Dribbler grasped tore away from the cheap uniform, leaving Dribbler staring in disbelief at a fistful of torn fabric, leaving Damiel stranded, frozen within the chalked-out circle of the Nephilim. Dribbler's expression fell to one of terror as he realized he had just killed the newcomer. The entire ward stared agape at Damiel as he cowered within the shadow of the Nephilim. Then, as one looked up, the beast opened its jaws impossibly wide, baring its teeth. The angel Damiel had been one of the fallen. Something in Michael snapped. Behind the strands of Michael's hair, a dangerous glint of green blazed from his eyes, and a smirk grew on his face. He shot out from his position in the corner, leaping across the room with the force of a tightly coiled spring, crossing the distance between himself and Damiel in an instant. Just as the Nephilim lunged towards Damiel, Michael barreled into the boy, tackling him to the ground. The Nephilim snapped at the air as Michael rolled him back over the chalk line and out of harm's way. With a loud clunk, the Nephilim reached the end of its chain, roaring in frustration, and clawed in vain at the two humans who were now just beyond its grasp. The ward exploded in cheers and applause. Michael pulled Damien to his feet and pushed him further away from the creature. As the cheers developed into chants, Michael raised one hand in a silencing gesture, looking surly at the onlookers. The cheers died down until all that could be heard were the continued barks of the beast. "Get to your rooms," he said, pointing. "Now." The inmates bolted from the common room, most running into the main dorm room, pulling the gate closed to watch whatever was about to unfold from behind the safety of the bars. Michael escorted Damien to safety. "Listen," Michael held him by the elbow. "Be strong and of good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord thy God, he it is who doth go with thee. He will never fail thee nor forsake thee." It was utter bullshit, but it was enough to help Damien through his first day. These poor bastards, all of them truly were forsaken. Michael turned his attention back to the Nephilim. The creature eyed him murderously for snatching away its prize. Michael walked calmly back towards the beast. All eyes followed him until he stood just outside the chalk line. The creature leapt up at Michael, straining against the chain. It towered above his head, snarling and barking at him, spittle flying from its jaws, swiping its enormous claws less than an inch from his face. Michael stood unflinching before the frenzy of the Nephilim, staring into the beast's fierce eyes. Then, in one of the purest acts of lunacy the asylum had ever seen, he took a step forward across the chalk line, placing him within the creature's reach. The Nephilim recoiled from either surprise or fear, unsure of what this man was doing. Michael smiled and with a primal grunt swung upwards and backhanded the creature with all his might, square across the mouth. And I'll stop there. Keeps going for a bit after that. We'll find out why. It's probably no surprise why Michael ends up being thrown across the common room, through down the hall and into the gates. But we start to see Michael being a bit stronger than we would probably expect to be able to go up against that Nephilim. But that's the intro to him. He's scarred physically, emotionally. He's given up. But what has he given up from, and why is part of our journey with Michael and Will.
No, now I understand why he was. Yeah.
Why he was flying through the corridor.
I probably would have thrown him too.
Yeah. But a bit more like that's they get into a bit of a tussle there. So it's interesting to see how Michael goes with Wendy in the common room there, because the not soon after the guards release Wendy from her chain. So they get into it, and Michael is pretty much outclassed, but he gets in his own couple of his own. But we do see this incredible strength he has, and it's interesting to then explore why that might be the case.
And I guess
if it was anyone else, they would not have survived any of that encounter.
And I guess he doesn't get eaten because he goes with Arlex and Will.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So
that'd be interesting to find out how he doesn't get eaten, because everybody else is behind the bars and he's not.
And then how does that all play out? And how do we were talking about in the blurb there escapees. So how do they even get out? What happens next to get Will and Michael out? So hey, thanks for letting me read. I'm happy to read excerpts, so I appreciate that.
Is there any?
I've never read excerpts, to be honest. So thanks a lot for that opportunity.
Oh, you did great. Is there any other character that we should meet?
No, I'm going to leave it there. Look, I'm actually, to be honest, I'm not. I was actually quite sick this morning, so I took plenty of I've had to take a few vitamins and meds to get me up to speed and looking awake and well. But I'm starting to struggle a bit now. Yeah,
Okay.
and my
Well,
throat's really going.
that's okay.
Yeah,
Is there anything else you want to say about Heretic or Will or Arlex or anything else?
No, look, that's. I think that's it. I think that's. I think I've given a really good picture, and I appreciate you giving me that opportunity, Melinda.
You're welcome.
But that's. Yeah, I think. There's we do see one of the other things was I wanted to see some strong female characters come through, and in the first book China Dawn is the main one, but then in book 2 we get introduced to some more that are a bit different to China, and but still quite good representation. And
I was gonna
the other
ask
thing,
because I was like, where are the ladies?
yeah, so there's more to come through. So but then the other thing was, coming from the perspective. So, some of the language that's being used there is, and you can see hints of it, but I am trying to do it from, so that's from the it's from Michael's perspective. What we're hearing there in the descriptions and so on is really from Michael. And interestingly, Michael is referencing, rather unusually, stuff from that we all are
Yes, I
familiar
caught
with.
that.
So he's
Could he possibly have been around for any of it,
yeah,
or just heard about it, heard stories from other
so
people?
he's talking about finger licking. He's talking about making a pun on KFC's slogan, and he's got talking about Pavlov and a couple of other references there, even Rip Van Winkle and whatnot.
Methuselah.
So Methuselah, yeah. So he knows he knows a bit about our culture. So
Is that
interesting to
because
see
he
where that.
experienced it?
Yeah. So we'll see where Michael's and yeah, the big thing also is why is he? What's brought him to this point? What brought him to come to the doors of Downshade and just walk in and surrender? And
why there and not somewhere else? Was there not a
yeah,
better option?
well, and then
Or was he afraid that he might harm himself and others if not locked up somewhere?
I think it was more just like might as well. Yeah, it was just more about being locked up. He's
or is he hiding? Because that's a really good place to hide. No one's going to look for you in an asylum.
Yeah, there's yeah.
That was my other thought.
Melinda's all over you're all over it. You uncover so much in your questions. It's not funny. But that's right. But that's the sort of things you're meant to be asking at this point. 100%. Is he, why? Why the hiding? Why the giving up? Why there? Is it, yeah. Well, what, why not somewhere else?
Yeah. Or is there something there that he wants? Because that's the other thing.
Yeah. It's more the known. It's more the knownness, but it's not. Yeah. Anyway, well, we'll see that stuff uncover as well. Yeah. So that's it. I'm gonna have to go for today. My throat's starting to hurt again.
Okay. No, it's getting late here, so I know for you it's what, like 9 or 10 in the morning. For me, it's like 9. It's after 9 p.m. in the evening.
yeah. We're 11 a.m. We're at 11 a.m. here down under. So look, we'll I appreciate your time, Melinda. Thanks for giving me that opportunity. If you want to have another chat in future, I'd love to do that again. And
come back for book 2 so we can try and pull some more spoilers out of you.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'll try and get, when I get to book 2, Melinda, I'll send you a copy of 1 and 2. In fact, I might send you one of I'll send you a copy of 1 as well if you're interested. If you don't have too much of a backlog of reading, I'll let you. I'll send across a copy of it for you to read.
I mean, yeah, I'd like to. I'd like to try and get to it, and I do have a bit of a backlog. My eyes are killing me today, so I don't think we'll be doing any reading. I don't know if you saw like the drops, or just for some reason the eyes are just burning and just not
Yeah.
happy today.
Yeah.
I'm not
Okay.
usually that bad with it. My eyes don't make tears, so I have to put them in, but it's not
Right.
usually every 5 minutes. Like for some reason, like I took all the allergy medicines, but they're just not
Stinging.
happy with me right now.
Does it sting?
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable. They're stinging, they're itching, they're like beyond the normal like dry eye feeling,
Okay.
which can feel like cellophane like
Oh,
against
geez.
your eye. It's
Oh,
not a
right.
comfortable feeling.
Sorry.
And the
Yeah.
drops do make it better, and usually they're better for a little while, but
Okay.
like I don't know, I'm like it's just not cooperate. It might be the bright light in my face too. Like I don't
Yeah.
know. Because
Yeah.
the lighting in my apartment is not fabulous. It's not good for this sort of
Yeah.
thing. So I just do the best that I can.
Yeah.
But thank
Okay.
you so much for joining me, and you're definitely welcome back anytime.
Thanks so
And
much.
yeah, you're welcome. And
That
this
was
has been
great.
an God,
I was
sorry.
gonna say, that was great. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about my book and read excerpts. I loved it, and really loved getting to know you, Melinda. Thanks for your generosity and your interest.
Oh, you're welcome. I love fantasy books and love fantasy authors. So for me,
Great.
this is just pure fun. And it's a treat, and I hope that it brings exposure and new fans.
Thanks,
Um,
heaps.
that's why I'm doing this, trying to help trying to help fellow indie authors. So yeah, but yeah, thank you again for coming. And this has been another episode of Fantasy Lore and More. So we had Chris Mayne today, and we were talking about Heretic and probably some of the sequels. We didn't get the titles. What are the titles of the next two books?
Yeah. So the next one is Darkfire, as number 2 in the trilogy, and the third is Lightfall, and the trilogy
Ooh,
is called Helios Rising. So
Helios Rising. Okay.
yeah, so Heretic, Darkfire, and then Lightfall. Yeah.
Nice. Those are great titles. Like, I'm not awesome at titles. I tend to be like, okay, there's a trap in it. We'll call it Trapped. Right? Great title. Like, I tend to be more of like the obvious.
Yeah,
Like,
I like
if the
that.
title is a joust, well, there's obviously a joust in
Yeah, I
it.
like that. Yeah,
I
you
tend
know
to be a
what
bit of
you're
a
getting.
spoiler.
You can tell what you're getting that way. Yeah.
Yeah, like I just can't seem to. That's just I have a few that are creative, but like
I
I'm
struggle.
always tempted to change them to something obvious.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm just Captain Obvious. I can't help it.
Cool.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you
you.
all for listening. We'll have like links in the show notes to everything, and along as the usual write-up. So you can find Chris and his book, Heretic. So thank you again, and have a great day or great night, depending on where you are.